Quick review of the book Next Stop by Benjamin Resnick. It came out at the end of 2024. This was his first novel, and he is also a conservative rabbi. It tells the story of a dystopian future, maybe what we call speculative fiction. It imagines in the near future that a black hole completely sucks in the entire population of the state of Israel. So the state of Israel is no more. And then these little anomalies, these little black holes start opening up in cities all across the world, mostly in populations where there are Jews. And occasionally Jewish people get sucked into these black holes and no one knows why. And this leads to restrictions and regulations against Jews, conspiracy theories, and all sorts of things. And at the backdrop of this is the story of a Jewish man and a Jewish woman who begin a relationship. And the Jewish woman, she has a child from a previous relationship named Michael. The Jewish woman's named Ella. The Jewish man's named Ethan. And they're from different Jewish backgrounds, but they end up, by the circumstances of the world, kind of being thrust together. And in the ensuing chaos that occurs, where some of these anomalies are getting bigger and bigger, and more people are disappearing, they're kind of brought together by the circumstances of the outside world pushing Jews together, and then also trying to create like normalcy, a normal life among other Jews who are living in an area called the Pale, which, if you know in Jewish history, is where Jews were supposed to live in Russia and in Eastern Europe. And so you have these little Jewish societies coming together, but the Jewish people in these societies are also still feeling the pull of these anomalies, and people are making the choice as restrictions get more and more effectual at making their lives bad. And as more and more persecution arises, and there's basically pogroms and the state-sponsored or looking the other way massacres or crimes against Jewish people, there are Jews who decide to actually embrace the anomalies and to go into these black holes and see where it takes them, what the unknown is. And it's really interesting because this came out right after October 7th, but it was actually written right before. It kind of was written in reference to the COVID pandemic towards the tail end of that, but became very relevant after October 7th. And it asks a lot of difficult questions, some that I've thought about a lot in the last few years. There's actually been several books that have come out where there's an existential crisis with the state of Israel. In this book, the state of Israel, the Jewish people in Israel, they disappear completely. In Jonathan Foer's book, Here I Am, there's an earthquake that causes massive havoc in Israel, and different neighbors, Arab nations, start attacking Israel. And there's this call by the prime minister for Jewish men all across the world to return home and to try to defend the Jewish state. And there's been a lot of these questions, I think, that really originated during the upheaval of the COVID pandemic, when there was already a rise in anti-Semitism. And then there was also the judicial reforms where it felt like the state of Israel was coming apart at the seams with like these strong divisions. And then October 7th just like made that even more so. But this notion of what does the state of Israel mean, and what does it mean to be Jewish in relation to the state of Israel, or if there is no state of Israel? And this is something I've thought a lot about. I think most Jewish people who are religiously engaged or culturally engaged, if not religiously engaged with their Judaism, this is something we think about. Like, what does it mean to be Jewish? You know, it's if you're at all engaged with Judaism, you know that it's not the message of we're just like everybody else, because we're not like everybody else. We are different. We have significant differences. We have things that we have in common with everybody else, but there are these cultural differences. Every culture has differences, and oftentimes what's made us different has been being the antithesis to whatever the mainstream cultural society is. Back in the ancient world, it was paganism and idolatry. For a lot of the last 2,000 years, it's been Christianity and Islam. Right now, it seems to be kind of holding on to a pre-modern identity that is ethnic in some ways, nationalistic, religious, and yet transforms all of these. It's tribal. The Hebrew word am, meaning people. There was a world of peoples that transcended kind of the understandings that we have today, that most of those peoples aren't around anymore, and we happen to be, and so we struggle to fit in kind of in the modern world. And I find that this book, it does raise a lot of questions. I have thought about this. What would I do if, God forbid, something happened to the state of Israel, knowing that half of the world's Jewish population was no longer viable? And then also, what would I do simultaneously as things get more uncomfortable here at times? You think about these things again. If you're religiously involved, if you're even just culturally involved, these are kind of questions about what does it mean to be Jewish? What are our non-negotiables? What can we put up with in terms of discomfort before we start thinking, okay, we need to do something? And the book, the discomforts get so horrible that people eventually decide to embrace these anomalies of black holes and to disappear into them. It's very thought-provoking. I think that it's something that a lot of us will wrestle with as we move into whatever this new era is of Jewish history and existence. And I also think it's something that a lot of non-Jewish people would find interesting because it shows kind of a different outlook on the state of the world than maybe would be presented from someone who had a different cultural or religious background. So again, that is Next Stop by Benjamin Resnick, and it's something that I probably will reread and continue to think about in the coming years.